Hello listeners, it's Lewis. Just a quick message before we start to say, you may have noticed that since dropping all 5 seasons of The Muppet Show on Disney Plus on February 19th, Disney has now decided to swap the order of episodes from its syndication order to its production order, which means that our first 3 episodes that we pre-recorded, including this one, are now not in the same order you would find them presented to you on Disney Plus. So, rather than find ourselves in a deficit, we decided we will post this week's episode covering Jim Nabors, now episode 6, before resuming the season next week from the start in production order. Got that? No, us either. Anyway, we hope you enjoy the now not quite chronological but still very explorational and conversational Muppetsational.
Hello and welcome to Muppetsational, the Muppet Show podcast hosted by 3 huge Muppet fans. Join us each week as we dive into an episode of Jim Henson's classic variety show, now finally available on Disney+. This week, it's Season 1, Episode 3, starring the classic comedy star Jim Nabors. It's time to get things started on the chronological, explorational, conversational Muppetsational. Hello everyone, I'm Jade Turner.
I'm Emma Chandler.
And I'm Lewis Chandler.
Oh, so good to be back talking about this week's episode. So, for a brief introduction to the episode, it was written by Jack Burns, Mark London, Jim Henson and Jerry Jewell, and directed by Peter Harris. Jim Nabors' episode was originally broadcast on the 26th of September 1976. It was the 4th episode shown in the original broadcast run, but it was actually, production code lists it as the 7th episode made. And now Disney Plus have included it as episode 3. So who knows, that's too many numbers for me. Lewis, have you got a little bio quickly for us about Jim Nabors himself?
I do. Jim Nabors. Now, firstly, did either of you know who Jim Nabors was before we started this episode?
No, to be honest, I didn't know who he was.
I have heard of Gomer Pyle before. Like, that's a name that's in the consciousness of my pop culture knowledge, but I couldn't really have told you anything about him or about the Andy Griffith Show, to be perfectly honest. So
Same. I'd come across Gomer Pyle via The Simpsons, but was not aware that it came from the Andy Griffith Show or that Jim Nabors played him, frankly. But Jim Nabors was a prolific American sitcom star of both the Andy Griffith Show and his own spin-off, Gomer Pyle USMC. He's kind of like the Frasier of the 1950s and 1960s. He was on like one successful sitcom and then he got to have his own. And he then became, as I'm sure you might have picked up from this episode, a successful country singer. Because I don't know if you noticed, he's from the country.
no. Is he a country boy?
Is he?
Is indeed. And not only is he a country boy, he's gay!
Yay!
Yay for Jim Nabors! I was quite indifferent to Jim Nabors through most of this episode. And then, I'm jumping ahead a little bit just to mention this about his homosexuality. In his chat with Kermit, he had a certain effete way about him, and then he mentioned star signs, and I was like, that is a homosexual man. I was like,
as soon as he mentioned
I'm
star signs.
sure of it.
Yeah.
And what did I do as soon as this episode was over? I rushed to Wikipedia and I scrolled down to everybody's favourite part of the Wikipedia page, the personal life page. And it's confirmed that he'd had a partner. Now, let me just double check this again. I want to get this right. For like 38 years.
Oh,
I know, and they married as soon as they were legally allowed to. But also, there's a great bit just underneath. After his actual relationship, it says, alleged relationship with Rock Hudson, which is just...
Ooh.
No, but they didn't, Emma, they didn't. But it was quite funny.
They were just friends.
It's quite funny because basically they invited everyone to this party that they had in Huntington Beach. And they said it was going to be the marriage of the two of them. And the reason they said that was because Rock was going to take Gomer Pyle's name and he was going to be Rock Pyle, which is hysterical.
So yeah, I was somewhat indifferent to this episode, quelle surprise. But as soon as I found out he was gay, I was like, good for Jim Nabors.
I kind of feel the same, and I feel like when I found out a little bit more about him, I suppose it kind of gave credence to the sincere country boy persona, which kind of felt quite forced, and like they just kept banging on about him being this country boy and having the split personality of an opera singer and a sitcom star. But then actually reading about him, I'm like, oh, maybe it's all true.
He's like the 1960 equivalent of Lil Nas X. It's or Orville Peck. But no, I softened to him quite a lot, actually. I don't know about you two. I was a bit worried about like actually having a male host after our first 2 episodes have been women, because obviously the Muppets as a group are quite lacking in female characters. So having a female guest anchor the show always gives it just a bit more of a wider source of energy. You've got like masculine energy and feminine energy there. But, you know, the first man was gay. So it was, I got everything I wanted, basically. I only want to exist in a world with women and gay men. So, and Muppets, obviously.
I was thinking the same as you, which is something we haven't really spoken about on the podcast yet, is how male-heavy the Muppet cast kind of typically is. But because we haven't needed to, because we've had the female guest stars. But now with a male guest star, I was the same. I was like, oh, and I kind of realised that actually other than Hilda, who we will talk about, by the way.
Is that what that old lady Muppet is called?
Yes. That is Hilda, and we'll get to Hilda.
Oh, we finally have a name.
But other than Hilda, you know, you've got Piggy and then like the little Muppet who gets her wig blown off. Basically, most of the female Muppets in this episode are just throwing themselves at Jim Nabors. Like, that's kind of all it is, isn't it?
There is nothing more old Hollywood than Miss Piggy throwing herself at a gay man. Do you know what I mean? It's
a gay man.
Like, it's like Judy and Liza, they all have to have a gay husband at some point. Carrie Fisher. Did Debbie Reynolds? No, Carrie Fisher had the gay husband. I was just like, this is too... Actually, that was another sign for me that I was like, I'm sure this man is gay because Miss Piggy is throwing herself at him. I was like, he has to be homosexual. It's Vincent Minnelli all over again.
Oh, so shall we get into it? I want to start this week by talking about the intro, because we haven't spoken about the Muppet Show intro yet, which...
Jade, do you mean the intro, or do you mean the content warning that came before the intro?
Oh, yes! I'd not forgotten about the content warning, but let's mention the content warning. Yeah. I mean, it was needed.
It was.
It was definitely needed.
Sitting there, like, slightly terrified at what
I
the
was
hell
as well. I was like, oh God, what's coming?
And I had sort of guessed, as soon as we sort of got into the country vibe, I was like, is it going to be Native Americans? Because I sort of... I was like, cowboys and Native Americans do seem to go together quite a lot. And, yep, I was right.
But bizarrely, not in any of his sketches.
Yeah.
Just in the little Wayne and Wanda throwaway segment. And I kind of got blindsided because I really liked Wanda's dress, and I was really appreciating her dress.
Oh, Jade.
And then all of a sudden popped out of the side of the screen, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
there we go. There's the content warning. That's where that's come from. Yeah.
But yeah, so I wonder how many more of those we're going to get over the next 5 seasons.
I feel probably a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the 70s, so...
It is the 70s.
I suppose maybe it was as simple as them thinking like, oh, we're doing a kind of country and western cowboy-y episode. Like, exactly like you said, Lewis, we need to play on those, or we can play on those stereotypes.
Well, at least it was brief. It was not appropriate, but at least it was brief. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about the introduction.
The actual introduction, which I don't think needs a content warning. Yeah, I think, obviously it's the first season, so you know it's not going to be the full-on huge Muppet celebration that we kind of associate with the Muppet Show opening. But it's still a lot of fun when you just hear that music and you see the chorus girls, including Miss Piggy, coming across the stage. It obviously really gets you in the mood for the show, doesn't it? And I mean, it always brings a smile to my face. But I do find it quite funny that it is quite lo-fi compared to what we kind of think of.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end with the rising...
The 3-tiered cake, yeah.
Cake. And you've got the Muppets on the end that literally aren't moving at all. Just
I was
going to
say they're not moving, are they?
Up and down.
I think they have one electronic arm that raises up for the finale on one side. It's like the worst kind of like Walt Disney Imagineering.
Yes.
Like, it's a small world after all. Like, they have one range of movement and that's it.
It's like It's a Small World when the animatronic is slightly broken.
Yeah,
it's just like...
but they can't afford to shut down the ride because it's too much of a people eater, so they need to keep it going. It's like, sorry, Malaysia isn't working right now, but please enjoy the other.
Enjoy the rest of the world. I find it a little bit creepy when you get to the end the end of it, and you've just got some of those Muppets that look a little bit dead inside.
Busted Muppets.
And they're just like waving.
Yeah. Although we got our first variation on the Gonzo hitting the O joke, because today he hit himself, which again is not surprising considering how he looks like he hasn't gone to bed. So
I love that he didn't have the gong, so he was like, the only thing I could possibly do is hit myself in this situation. I have to hit something.
look, the pressure and demands of being on stage, if you find oneself with or without a prop, you have to just improvise and make do. I once did a scene on stage where I was meant to bring on a book that was a prop for an entire scene, and I did not have it, so I just held my hands behind my back and tried not to laugh.
Oh my goodness.
Or the worst one, I was in an Agatha Christie play where a newspaper was meant to be a vital prop that drove a lot of dialogue for the subsequent scene, and there's no scene breaks in the second act, and that newspaper just wasn't there. So me and the other actress on stage, who was the understudy who had come on that day because the lead actress was sick, had to improvise Agatha Christie for about 6 lines. It was the most terrifying thing. We were in front of like 800 or 900 people in Manchester. It was... Anyway, so I think Gonzo coped admirably well, and I would have done exactly the same.
Well done, Gonzo and Lewis.
Thank you. That's all I wanted, actually.
What a shock. Yeah, no, it was funny to see him hit himself. I like, he kind of, I don't know, it wasn't quite vibrating, but he kind of wobbled afterwards with the shock of it, which I thought was quite amusing. And especially with Gonzo, with all of his current plumage of hair at the back, like it all sort of vibrated a bit, which was pretty funny.
In this episode, we get introduced to Scooter, although I suppose he was in the episode we saw previously with Sandy Duncan.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit out of context, but he's cute.
Oh, variety show running.
Yeah, I love it that he comes on and he's got his whole go for coffee.
I love that he's already got Muppet Show merch. His jacket is a Muppet Show jacket. Like, he didn't even have the job. Where's he got the jacket from? Like, he's just rocked up in this Muppet Show jacket and is like, yes, if I wear the correct attire, they will definitely have to give it to me. Then there's the whole thing with his uncle, Benny Vandergast Memorial Theatre, and that the Muppets owe 3 months back rent, which is why Kermit can't say no to him. Just like, oh, my life.
I'm not gonna lie. This episode made me deeply resent Scooter.
What, for having Benny Vandergrast as his
Privilege,
uncle?
connections, forces himself into a job because of who he knows. Like, it's all the worst things about this industry, Jade and Emma. Like, it's all of the stuff that I hate. Like, it's every reason that we have the same 15, like, high cheekboned, like, male British actors, because they all went to the same frickin' school and they all know the same frickin' people. And it made me really hate Scooter. He is a product of privilege and connection.
Oh, I don't think I can hate Scooter, but
Neither did I, but here we are, Jade. This is where I find myself. Maybe it's because I haven't worked in a year because of this pandemic, but like I was like, this is everything that's wrong with theatre. Like he only got in there because his uncle owned the theatre. Like it's, he's like, what is Ben Schwartz's character in Parks and Rec?
Oh, John Ralphio.
Yeah, it's literally, he's like a chaotic good version of John Ralphio. Where he just comes in, complete with like the proper, like, what's it called? Bomber jacket and everything. Like, all he was missing was like a like campy scarf. And just to be like, singing everything. And just... Yeah, so I'm afraid the more that we sort of dug into Scooter's backstory, I just got madder and madder. Yes, he did prove himself indispensable, but his foot got in the door for the wrong reasons. I'm sorry.
I suppose sort of zooming out a little bit, like it's kind of interesting that they decided that they were going to bring in this interny gopher character, and then they were still going to play on the fact that he's connected and that he's got this privilege. Like, for the 70s, that feels quite kind of pointed. And
it means it's been in this damn thing for generations. It means that it's never changed.
Forever.
Sorry, I'm just...
Breathe, Lewis,
just raging.
breathe. It's okay.
Stupid Scooter.
Do you need to take 5?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
But once you got over the
rage,
the shock and the rage, I mean, I kind of felt like the whole... I was very grateful for Scooter being introduced, and I actually really enjoyed what he was doing on screen. But the kind of the running joke of owing the back money and like having to bow down to his uncle and everything, it got quite old quite quickly. Because again, it was just sort of that one note of your uncle owns the theatre, like, we just have to work with that.
And it also confused me as to why they don't just use all the money they get from the end of the Dr. Teeth number. That also has nothing to do with anything. Like, we have an otherwise completely, like, country, you know, episode, and then at the beginning we have Dr. Teeth, like, dressed like a pimp, playing a sort of jazzy piano number where he suddenly gets a bunch of cash out of the standing piano. It's just,
to be fair,
use that money and we don't have to hire Scooter.
Kermit afterwards did tell Hilda to make sure that she kept that money, so maybe he was going to use that money for the rent.
Then why do we need to hire Scooter?
Too many questions, Lewis, too many questions.
Not enough answers. Too many long runners and not enough holding people account. That's what we need.
I mean, I enjoyed the Dr. Teeth number for what it was, but it was not in keeping with the rest of the episode at all.
Yeah, it didn't kind of make any, like, when I first saw it, I was like, so what vibe are we going for this episode? You know, especially when he said buckets full of ducats. I was like, what? What is happening?
And it was also strange not to have the guest in the first big number. Like, it was like it had just been sort of popped in at the beginning because it wouldn't make sense anywhere else once we got into, like, you know, back on the farm. Like, it's like, so we've got to chuck this up at the beginning because otherwise it's gonna jar with the rest of the episode.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was like we need to put it at the start because it's almost then, like, once you get into all the country stuff, you've sort of forgotten that you've had that jangly Dr. Teeth number.
Yeah. I did like his arms though. I liked the stretchy arms. That was great.
Yeah, and I just think Dr. Teeth, like, you know, quite often when we see the Electric Mayhem, or certainly in more recent years, like when you see the Electric Mayhem, they're always like in the background or playing along to a song or something. Like, they don't necessarily get starring roles. So I quite appreciated actually just seeing Dr. Teeth. He's got so much energy and it's so, yeah, it is really vibrant. And like when they played with his stretchy arms and everything, and there was close-ups on his hands and stuff because they knew that it looked that good.
It does.
Yeah, it does. It looks amazing. So I did really enjoy it, but it was afterwards when it went into like the Gone with the Wind and everything, I was just like, what's this episode doing?
Gone with the Wind was so much fun. I think that was my high point of this episode.
It was hilarious. It's like, let's just throw on some wind machines and get crazy.
I don't know about you two. If I could be in a scene of something, like a nonsensical scene, like to have enormous wind fans blowing in my face, like would just be like so much fun. And did you notice that the sort of, I guess, Scarlett O'Hara, like stand-in for this Gone with the Wind number was Animal's dance partner from last week's ballroom sketch where they were throwing themselves from side to side. Like,
she's a legend.
This dancer is game. She's like, she's willing to throw herself onto the floor. She's willing to lose her wig in a comedy number, blown away by a massive wind machine during a comedy song number. She's so game, and I wish we knew who she was.
She is amazing. I had not realised that was the same Muppet, but that makes a lot of sense because I feel like maybe she's got the most character development thus far.
I know.
Other than Scooter, but I don't want to make you angry, Lewis. You know, she's clearly up for anything.
Yeah, she is.
I struggled a little bit to get into it to start with because Jim Nabors was playing it so straight and like so kind of sincere, and I was just like, okay, what's happening here? What's going on? But then also there was one bit when I think it was when she first got blown away the first time, that he kind of broke and he started to smile. And then I was like, oh no, like now I'm really confused because then afterwards when they cut back, he was playing it really straight again.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I guess it must be pretty hard not to laugh when the Muppets are being ridiculous all around you and you've got wind and leaves and the Muppet Ranch is falling down. And
there was a lot, definitely.
There was a lot going on.
Yeah. I love they were doing the number, it seems, in like Dorothy Gale's Kansas farm.
Yes.
like it even sounded like a full-on tornado was coming. Like, it's like surprising. Again, maybe another reference to his homosexuality. He's a friend of Dorothy.
And he's being blown away to the wonderful Wizard of Oz shortly. No, it was a lot of fun. And I did, when I rewatched it, the way that his voice and the music and the wind all kind of crescendoed together and then obviously ended with the final gag of her wig and everything going. It was a beautiful piece of nonsense. It was lovely.
It was great. I loved it. Favorite
It
part.
was really good.
Something I would really like to talk about, probably not going to take very long because they were all exceptionally short. There were 3 cute little vignettes that I thought were interesting, and especially with the houses, something we haven't seen before in the Disney Plus order of episodes anyway. So we had the little house vignette number. Then there was the news flash with Billy Lee Boomer, which seems to be becoming a bit of a runner for showcasing this week's guest.
Yeah, it's accent showcase. It's accent showcase. It's
accent work.
It is. Love accent work.
And then we also had the Danceros, which I thought was quite a lot of fun. So let's do them in order for the sake of ease.
Yeah, let's do it.
The houses, I thought these were really, really cool Muppets. Like, I was really... When they first appeared, I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is different. And I wasn't sure how long it was going to be, but I kind of liked that it was really short and sweet and just like this little pop.
It reminded me, so one, I don't know if it reminded either of you two, it sort of felt a bit Sesame Street. Do you know what I mean? Like the sort of look and the vibe of it looked a bit sort of like cozy and Sesame Streety. And then 2, I feel like I'm referencing a lot of other media today. But the talking houses also reminded me of Emma, well, both of you watched 30 Rock, the talking mailbox from when they talk about Carrie Fisher's one episode character writes on. Like, she's like, the mailbox sketch that shocked America, because it's just like this thing with just a couple of eyeballs. It just sort of like says a line and then it just falls over. It felt very variety show, inanimate object, becomes sentient, has a pun, and then it ends.
You're right, it was quite Sesame Street, other than the fact that it was sort of a lot of greys and browns, and definitely not designed in bright technicolor for the children.
Learning environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Emma, did you guess what the end gag was going to be on the Danceros? I'm interested.
No.
I was wondering if anybody else sort of guessed that it was going to be one creature with 2 pairs of legs.
No, I hadn't.
Oh, no, I didn't have a clue.
I hadn't guessed either.
I thought it was just going to be legs. I didn't realise there was going to be like a little Muppet monster on the top there.
I thought it was just going to be a minute and a half of legs, and I was like, God, this is such a filler episode. And then I don't know what it was. I was like, that's going to be one creature. I don't know why I think it is, but it is. And then they panned up to his beautiful little soft head, and I just wanted to hug him. I was like, oh, that Dancero is adorable. Where do I get a plush version?
He was super cute. When we saw him with all of his fluff and his big googly eyes, I was like, oh, what a cutie.
What a cute little Muppet. No wonder he's Mr. McRichuncle's favourite act. He's so cute.
Benny Vandergast.
Benny Vandergast. I'm so sorry.
You should be. So sorry.
This is why I don't get booked in the Muppet Theatre, because I don't know who Benny Vandergast is.
Don't have the connections, Lewis.
I don't.
Don't have the right uncle.
No.
There were a lot of Statler and Waldorf inserts as well.
There was.
Which were of varying degrees of successfulness in their jokes, I felt like.
I quite liked them this week.
I didn't mind their interactions with Fozzie and everything. I really enjoyed. But there were jokes, like, there was a joke about Jim Nabors where they joked about him being a good neighbour.
Yeah.
And it just felt like the first joke that anyone would ever make. Do you know, like, it's like you need to redraft that. Don't take the first idea to the TV show. You need to work on that ever so slightly more. Like, just ever so slightly more.
I do feel like this episode was very much a first draft kind of episode, to be honest.
Yes, I think you're right.
I think it was the
right.
vibe of this episode.
I suppose if it was the 7th episode made, maybe they're getting a slight amount of burnout, and maybe that's why there was a bit of an over-reliance on, he likes country music. Okay, country, let's do it.
Because I felt like, compared to Rita Moreno and Sandy Duncan, it felt like he was on screen a lot more than those two were, because a lot of his sketches were all back-ended on the episode. He had like a lot where he was just sort of on screen continuously. And I didn't know whether that was just because they were like, oh, he can, like, he's this double threat and he can sing and he can also do the sitcom and whatever. Or whether, was he just so famous at the time that they were like, we've got him, we need to put him on screen constantly.
See, weirdly, I felt like Sandy Duncan was more of a presence in her episode. So far, I think I saw Sandy Duncan most, then Jim Nabors, and then Rita Moreno, where I was like, where's Rita Moreno? Bring back Rita Moreno.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, if we're just talking about vignettes, good Lord, quickly. Another god goddamn ballroom sketch.
Oh, my life.
I like every time they start, even Peter, who was watching with me again today, was like, oh, another one of these? Like, yeah, I even just wrote in my notes, goddamn ballroom sketch.
Yeah.
And there was a horrible joke with a dismembered Muppet head.
It was definitely the weirdest one so far.
Because the content warning had come, and also we hadn't had the Native American yet, when they did the setup about the Asian flu, I was terrified about what the punchline was going to be. I mean, it was only... I was like, oh, God, what's going to happen? And please don't let Rolf the dog be about to do a horrible, like, you know, parody Asian accent or something like that. And it was... The punchline was only about fortune cookies, but I was like, ugh! Like I suddenly felt myself like tense up, being like, oh God.
I mean, it still wasn't great. Him saying that he needed to take 2 fortune cookies was still a bit like, hey, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
1976, everybody.
I didn't mind the headless and the head. I think that was the only bit of the dancing Muppet that actually made me chuckle. I mean, it wasn't like a full-on laugh or anything, but when he said to her, that's something I've been looking for all my life. I guess it just played on that, like, it's meant to be romantic, but he's headless, she's a head.
I think it was the macabre,
yeah,
the kind of macabre turn of her head, lifeless head, to the camera, so we got it very clearly that it's like, this is just a head. Like, it's kind of like this sort of more creepy version of Headless Bill from Muppets Treasure Island. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, ooh. Actually, if we are still talking about, I'm going to get it right this time, vignettes, the UK spot this week. Rolf and some other dog singing a song.
Can I just talk about that other dog? I've never really thought about Muppet eyes that much. I guess because we just sort of accept Muppet eyes as they are because they're so well done. But how weird was it to see that dog's eyes just like flat cardboard?
Yeah, they were just like stuck on.
Yeah, it was bizarre. Again, talk about first draft. It's like, did you make that Muppet in about 6 minutes? Because
it's like they had the Muppet, but they were like, oh crap, we haven't sewn any eyes into him. Oh, just get those glasses, they'll be fine. They weren't even like Scooter's eyes, where they're like, you know, curved a little bit to give them a bit more shape.
Completely flat.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. I don't know, it really took me out of it and really creeped me out because I was just like, you don't look like a normal Muppet, but also you don't look kind of alive. They're normally so good with the eyes, like the position of the pupils so that they do look alert, and then obviously also having like the roundedness or at least the sort of 3-dimensionality to whatever shape they are. Having them completely flat was just like, weird.
And
really
talk about
weird.
Flat, the song was so freaking dull as well. Like,
so dull.
Again, my notes just right. UK spot. Oh God, please end. That was all I had. Again, the Americans were lucky to.
They were lucky.
I'd rather watch commercials.
But then we went on to the talk spot with Jim Nabors and Kermit and Miss Piggy, which we've already kind of touched on.
He's a Gemini.
I mean, we did find out that Kermit was a Taurus because he's a bullfrog. Hey!
He's a bullfrog. Waka waka.
Waka waka. I did enjoy that. Although now it just makes me want to like find out all the other Muppet star signs. Like it just.
We also got a bit of Piggy's backstory in there too, because she said that she wasn't born under anything, but she was born over Becca's butcher shop and she got out as quick as she could, which is pretty amazing.
That was funny.
The idea that Piggy would have to like escape as a young piglet by night, like,
from a butcher's,
make her way on the star circuit.
Yeah, I felt like again we were starting to see a bit more of Miss Piggy as Miss Piggy with the throwing herself on him, and
Definitely.
she was genuinely she was completely turned on when he started singing. She was just it almost felt like she was going to be like, shut the cameras down, I need a moment.
Shut the cameras down. Cut the cameras, dead ass.
I mean, you know, regardless of the fact that she obviously didn't realise he was gay, which is totally fine.
No, it's perfect. It's Judy. It's Judy Garland throwing herself at Vincent Minnelli. Like, think of the gay icon we could have had if Jim Nabors and Miss Piggy had made it. Like part felt, part human, part pig. Oh God, it would have been like an even gayer Dolly Parton.
Oh no, I think that there's a reason that didn't happen, Lewis. That could like spontaneously combust at any moment, I think, like as a concept.
Oh God.
I feel like we haven't really spoken about Fozzie an awful lot on the podcast yet, for good reason, because
No.
he's not really fully formed Fozzie Bear, I don't think, in these early episodes. And quite frankly, he's really not hilariously funny, which these days I think Fozzie is usually pretty consistently amusing, but he's not kind of found those rhythms yet. But I think in this episode, you start to see him come out a little bit more, but you also see Statler and Waldorf being more amusing. And that heckling relationship. Oh, and then you also have that whole yeah bit that goes on for way too long, but let's not worry about that.
I didn't mind it.
Oh, really?
This was the first time for me that the Fozzie and Waldorf and Statler material kind of properly landed, because it actually had enough time to sort of build up the back and forth. I actually really quite liked this one. This is the first time where I was sort of like, ooh, this feels kind of right. Actually, the thing that I've been sort of noticing, maybe only in just these first 3 episodes, is that actually Kermit and Fozzie's relationship doesn't feel quite right yet. Like, Kermit keeps making jokes putting down Fozzie, whereas the sort of relationship that I sort of understand them to have is that Kermit likes Fozzie, and so he keeps giving him a chance because he wants his friend to do well, rather than Kermit in this feeling like he's lumbered with a bad comedian.
And just in general, Kermit's a supportive frog. He supports everyone to do what they want to do and to pursue their passion. He's not there to put people down or to make jokes at their expense. Yeah, it did feel really weird when he made that joke about how would you know if Scooter's jokes are awful. I was like, oh, Kermit, you're mean. Like, where'd that come from?
Jade, it's because he's a Taurus. That's why.
It's true. It's very true. It's a big old mean bullfrog Taurus.
Yeah. Now, just before we get to the bit that follows, there was a tiny bit with Fozzie Bear where he noticed that what's up with Scooter. But again, maybe this is why I was connecting with Fozzie more this episode, because he understood it was unfair that Scooter was in this job, because he was like, why is this person here? Anyway, that's fine. I'm done. That's all I need.
I was going to say, are you okay now?
I don't know, okay? This episode brought up a lot of feelings, okay? I'm thinking about Jim Nabors and his not marriage to Rock Hudson. I'm thinking about privilege. Like,
there's a whole lot going on.
There is.
Oh, dear. The bakery sketch.
Did you two not? To me, this is typical Muppets. Like, this is typical Muppets, play on words, playing with Jim Nabors' accent and creating crazy Muppets to fit in with whatever the running gag is. I didn't mind it.
Yeah, I mean, I did wonder when the rats, whether we were going to see like an early incarnation of Rizzo, but no, it was just a really weird whack.
Oh, go on. Episode using a whack.
A wat.
I thought a putty wat.
I thought a pussycat. Oh, no, it was just a really weird... I can't say
Go
it.
on, yeah, it's quick. We're keeping this in. We're keeping it in.
This is staying in, Emma. It has to stay in now.
It's comedy gold.
Come on, you can say it. You can
go on,
say
Emma,
rat.
go on. Really weird rat.
It was just a really... No,
go
I
on, do
can't
it.
I'm like psyching myself out.
No, come on, please.
It was a really weird rat.
Yay!
There we
go.
It was a really weird rat. Like, it just squeaked once. I think I wasn't with this sketch because immediately I was like, why does a bakery need a security guard?
It was a super weird premise.
So that you can get to the eventual punchline of raising dough.
Ba-bum ching.
The absurdity curve was already at an 11 before it even began, before we got the hens. Peter did like this sketch, I'm going to say. But he loves puns and he grew up on a farm, so, you know. Like,
I mean, again, as I said before, I'm not a huge pun fan, but I do think the Muppets do it really well. And I guess I'd rather watch this in a way than the final song about him being a... Thank God I'm a country boy.
Did you know he's a country boy?
If you didn't, you do now.
Are you aware that Jim Nabors, he's a country boy? He's from the country.
I think it's like, thank God I'm a country boy. Thank God it's nearly over.
I mean, we had it all. We had like grits, griddles, fiddles, a barn, hay.
I wondered if the one of the content warnings might have been for these sort of like hick Muppets as well. I couldn't tell whether maybe these were like culturally no longer appropriate either. Like there was one like playing its jug, like the
Did you notice that several of the Hick Muppets only had one tooth? I was like, oh my god, they've only got one tooth.
Or like, yeah, just like no very distinct eyes, lots of facial hair. Like, did one of them have an eye patch? Like,
I think maybe. It was just like, I was looking at them and I was like, they're clearly like country bumpkin. Some of them even looked a little bit like garden gnomes. And then I noticed that at least two of them only had one tooth, and I was like, oh no. I was like, this is bad.
There was also some bad fake fiddle playing by Jim Nabors. That was some half-assed fake fiddle playing.
The bad fake fiddle playing, that's a tongue twister.
Go on, Emma, try saying that. Go on.
No.
Go on, please.
It's not happening. No. Move on.
That was bad enough. But the other bit that really got me at the start of the song was the chickens and stuff at the back were meant to be clapping along or drumming along, and they were completely out of time, which I just found massively distracting, because they were almost like completely off the beat, and I was like, what is this? Like, you're meant to be premier Muppet performers here, like, please just find the beat and stick to it. Like,
they're hick chickens, they're hickens, they don't know, they're in character. It's like Janice in episode 1 choosing an accent for veterinary hospital. They're committing to the role.
Well, they're letting Jim Nabors down, do you know what I mean? Because thank God he's a country boy, and he just wanted to play his fiddle and get his grits on the griddle, you know, like
cakes on the griddle.
Sorry.
I think Dolly Parton covered this song.
Really?
I feel like I'm pretty sure I have heard Dolly Parton sing.
You've heard her
song.
say cakes on a griddle.
God.
I know, yeah, like homespun.
I just want to mention one other thing about this, because I needed to rewind it to listen to it. He says a line about jewels, but because of his accent, I thought he was saying Jews. And then what also follows him saying jewels is something about being money hungry. So I think we're pretty much in that area, even if he does actually say jewels. Because I was still very much on the lookout for those content warning issues, you know?
Yeah.
And dicey lyrics at best, I would say. It's like...
Yeah, I think this whole episode was just a bit dicey, full stop. Should we move on to our MVMP of the week?
Yes. Lewis, do you want to go first?
Well, sure as hell ain't Scooter. I think I've made that pretty damn clear. Who would be my... Do you know what? I'm going to choose the Dancero. The sketch I thought was fine, but when they panned up to that adorable fuzzy face and his big mouth and the googly eyes, I immediately just sort of went, oh. And also because it took two kind of like puppeteering things to make him happen. So I'm going to say the Dancero. Danceros, plural, singular, however they choose to identify.
Emma, who was your MVMP?
I think I'm going to have to say Statler and Waldorf, purely because I think they carried a lot of the episode. Yes, some of their gags didn't particularly land, but some of them did. And I think they actually found their pace a lot more in this episode. And their interaction with like Fozzie, I just think that they kind of came into their own a bit today. So I think they're going to be my most valued Muppet performer for this episode. Jade, how about you?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like it was such a mixed bag of an episode. Like, I really struggled to pick a Muppet that really stood out. I feel like maybe, Lewis, you've swayed me when you said that the little Muppet who lost her wig was the Muppet from last week who did the falling over.
Oh no!
Yeah, I think I might have to go with her, because I think she's bringing a lot to the cast in general. She's really rocking it. Last week she made me giggle. This week she's made me giggle. So I'm going to go with unknown wigless Muppet.
Chorus girl.
I will try and find out her name.
I think it's important. Jade, do you have your rating for the episode as well?
Yeah. Oh, this is a tough one again, because I just sort of feel like it was very, very mixed. But I'm going to go for 5 out of 10 Becca's Butcher Shops.
Very good.
Yeah, I think it was, you know, there were some high points. I did enjoy the puns in the bakery sketch. Jim Nabors clearly has a very good singing voice. Did you realise that?
I thought it was a bit honking, but anyway, carry on.
Overall, this has definitely been my least favourite of the 3 so far. So 5 out of 10 Becca's Butcher Shops. Emma, how about you? How do you rate this episode?
Well, again, I didn't feel it was the strongest of episodes. So I decided to give it 5 out of 10 buckets full of ducats.
I love it.
Right? I know. It felt really a bit disjointed. It didn't have quite a good flow to it. And yes, there were some definite high points, but I don't know. It did feel a bit like it was dialed in this week. So yeah, I'm going to say 5 out of 10. How about you, Lewis?
I think I'm also going to go for a 5. I'm going to do 5 cakes on the griddle out of 10. I think, honestly, it might have even been close to a 4, and the only reason I'm going to a 5 is because Jim Nabors is gay. So I'm just giving it a bonus point, to be honest. I love the Gone with the Wind, but yeah, it just all didn't quite gel together, and I hate Scooter now, apparently, and he is going to have to win me back over the rest of this season for me to come round to his necessity in the Muppet troupe. Jade, do you want to give us our weekly Muppet philosophy?
I've got a fun one this week. So again, this is taken from Jim Henson, the biography by Brian J. Jones. And a quote from Henson that I really liked was, "A child's use of imagination and fantasy blends into his use of creativity. The trick is to try out whole new directions. There are many ways of doing something. Look for what no one has tried before."
And I've got to say that nobody had tried to do a security guard in a bakery before. So kudos, Jim Nabors. Breaking down doors in all senses of the word. Thank you so much for listening to Muppetsational. If you've enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate and review, as it really helps spread the word about the podcast. You can follow us on social media. We are at Muppetsational on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. You can contact us at hiho@muppetspodcast.com, and you can find out more about us and the podcast at muppetspodcast.com. That's all for this week. Join us again for another episode of Muppetsational. I've been Lewis Chandler.
I've been Jade Turner.
And I've been Emma Chandler.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Our theme music is Peppy Pepe by Kevin MacLeod, and our artwork is designed by Charlotte Rudge, who you can follow at Charlie_R_Rudge on Instagram.
Jim Nabors is from the country.